Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton is essentially tied. Some polls have him up by a couple of points. So that's where we found Donald Trump just speaking to the crowd there in New Hampshire. We're going to hear from Hillary Clinton, we expect, a bit later on this hour.
You mentioned some of the numbers, John. We have some brand new polls giving us a look at the state of the race in the home stretch. In Virginia, Hillary Clinton has a 7-point edge there, 45 to 38%. But according to the Real Clear Politics average of national polls, the race is much tighter, with Clinton leading by less than 2 points. Our Fox News scorecard also shows Donald Trump gaining momentum following a week that has been described as a bad one for Hillary Clinton. Our decision team is shifting New Hampshire, where Donald Trump was just speaking, from leaning Democrat to a toss-up. Ohio going from a toss-up to leaning Republican. Indiana and Missouri shifting from leaning Republican to solid Republican. Clinton still has electoral advantage, but Trump now has a clearer path to victory if the voting breaks his way on Tuesday. Let's talk about this with Jamie Weinstein, senior writer at The Daily Caller and host of the Jamie Weinstein Show podcast. Jamie, great to have you back on the program. What are your observations? Here we are on a Friday. We should mention, just around this time last Friday, everything changed with the announcement from the FBI. Yeah. So we're watching the headlines. But just set the stage for us. How do you see the landscape as of right now?
Well, we just heard Donald Trump. He's speaking in New Hampshire, staying on message, which he has done for a few days now. Maybe it's breaking records with staying on message. And it seems to be working a bit. As you mentioned, the polls are narrowing. He's doing a little bit better. But even so, even as your Fox News map showed, that even as New Hampshire moves to a toss-up and Ohio moves into his direction, the numbers are still very hard for him. You have 283 electoral votes still, according to your brain desk there, with Hillary Clinton. She only needs 270 to win. So Donald Trump still needs to win all those toss-up states and then go and pool some states from Hillary Clinton, like North Carolina, like Pennsylvania, in order to win this race. So he's doing better. The polls show him doing better, but it's still an uphill climb. He has to have everything fall his way on election night to win this race.
And of course, we're only using what we have. All we have right now are some of the polling, and some of the parties have some information themselves. They do their own research. RNC Chairman Reince Priebus was on America's Newsroom this morning, Jamie, and he was asked about what you're talking about here, which is that Democrats are saying they're doing very well in early voting in 3 key states. He had this to add about how Republicans are doing.
Voting is up among Republicans in Nevada, and voting is down for Democrats. Let's look at North Carolina. North Carolina, keep in mind, for everyone out there, on Election Day 4 years ago, we were down 455,000 votes on Election Day. We won North Carolina. We're ahead in Florida by 15,000 votes.
What do you think of what Reince Priebus had to say, Jamie?
Well, you know, both sides are going to try to spin the numbers in their favor. I will note this, though. Donald Trump has recently gone to Arizona. I hear that he might be going back to Arizona. I think that says a lot. Arizona should be strong in the Republican camp, not needing to send people there, even the presidential candidate themselves, to win the state. The fact that he is playing in Arizona this late in the game does suggest that the map is still in Hillary Clinton's favor. That said, you know, this has been a year of electoral surprises. Who knows what happens on Election Day? Perhaps the numbers are wrong, or perhaps things are moving rapidly in Donald Trump's favor at the end. But just by the fact that he's going to certain states that normally he wouldn't have to.
But let me just take you up on that, because Arizona, he is going to Arizona, but Hillary Clinton is spending all this time in Pennsylvania. We're waiting. She was supposed to be speaking, and we're going to listen to a little bit of what she has to say in Pittsburgh when she steps to the microphone. But at this point, with so many different pundits saying, well, Pennsylvania is basically a Democrat state, is it surprising to you that she's spending so much time there and going to be holding that big rally on Monday if they felt so confident about that state going blue?
Well, you know, it's a fair point. There is the argument that by going there, she may be drawing Donald Trump to go there more. It's kind of make them believe that the state is up for grabs. But maybe she sees numbers that scare her, and maybe that is why she's going. Back in 2012, Mitt Romney spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania, because that's always, you know, the prize for Republican candidates. If you can get those 20 electoral votes, that really does change the map. So, the polls seem to suggest that Hillary has a decent lead there, not an insurmountable insurmountable lead. But maybe Donald Trump is seeing numbers that other people are not seeing.
It's such an interesting point. I'm just going to hang out here in this state until you get here.
It happens. It's a strategy.
Absolutely. It's one that we really haven't talked a lot about, Jamie, so some great insight as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
West that had gone very quickly in a very short period of time, over 15 years, from being almost entirely white to having a burst of diversity. And for the most part, that was Latinos. And then what we found was we looked at that and combined it with Republican voting results in the GOP primaries. And what we found was that those places that had diversified the most rapidly among Republican voters in the primaries, they were more likely to vote for Donald Trump than in counties overall nationwide.
That was part of our conversation yesterday with a Wall Street Journal news editor on how immigration in Midwestern states has influenced the voters in local communities. Today, that paper takes another look at changing demographics in key battleground states like the ones you see on your screen. In a Wall Street Journal article entitled "The Voters in a Changing Nation," the authors write, dig beneath the familiar map of red states and blue states, and the contest between Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Hillary Clinton turns up as a set of fault lines running through America's suburbs, its small cities and outer exurbs, with strongholds for Democrats in the nation's metropolitan areas and for Republicans in rural communities. The battle lines are in constant flux. Joining us now, the two who wrote that article, Wall Street Journal national politics editor Aaron Zipner and national political and data reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Dante Cini. Thank you both for joining us. That line I just quoted goes on to say that if you want to look at this year's election, Dante, you have to look at America by geography. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm a big believer, and I think Aaron is as well, and folks at the Journal, of using geography as a way to kind of understand the fault lines in America, as you mentioned at the top. Look, we spend a lot of time dividing the electorate, thinking about men, women, Hispanics, different income levels, different education levels. But the thing is, all those things can be seen through geography, too, at the local level. The fact is, we've clustered as a nation. Some counties have certain types of people. Some counties have other types of people with different interests, different incomes, all sorts of different variables at play. And through geography, we thought you could have a better look at what's actually going on.
So, Aaron, you took a look at 5 battleground states, and you honed in on specific counties in those 5 states. What does it tell you about how people are feeling and what's going to turn this election?
Well, we went to what we thought were hot spots, places that once we see what the election results are, will tell us how the contour lines, how the battle lines between Democrats and Republicans have moved. So, for instance, I went to a county in Ohio that's a real bellwether county. Obama won it by less than 1 percentage point last time. It's been heavily Democratic. It's a manufacturing community that's lost a lot of jobs. And you talk to Democratic leaders there and union leaders, and they say, hey, usually about a third of union guys will vote Republican. This time it could be half. And you talk to Democratic leaders, and they say a lot of Democrats in this county voted in the Republican primary. So we think that's one place where the lines are going to move in the Republicans' favor, and they're going to pick up ground in industrialized Midwest cities all throughout Pennsylvania and Ohio. But then on the other hand, we went to a county outside Philadelphia, upper income, not racked by the same kind of economic anxiety that you see in manufacturing communities, wealthy, but also right on the edge, 50-50 county last time between Romney and Obama. This one looks like it might swing to the Democrats, and that will show us that the Democrats' lines, Democrats keep pushing out from their base in the big metropolitan areas further into the suburbs. And when we went to Chester County outside Philadelphia, that could be the next domino to tip as the Democrats push out into the wealthier suburbs.
So you might find a Hillary Clinton sign on the door at the Union Hall, but not necessarily everyone inside is going to be voting that way. Some other surprises in this article. Back with more from Aaron and Dante in just a moment. Out from the election, we're back with Wall Street Journal national politics editor Aaron Zipner and national political and data reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Dante Cini. Dante, what are you going to be watching election night when the returns come in?
Well, I'm a little bit of a geography geek, unfortunately, so I'm going to spend a lot of time looking at specific counties. Some of these counties we went to, actually, I'm going to be looking at Chester County in Pennsylvania. I'm going to be looking at Stark County in Ohio, Wake in North Carolina. The thing that's, I think, things that are really interesting to me is what's going to happen with the suburban vote. And I think that's a little bit of what Chester County is about in Pennsylvania. Does it turn out? Democrats have really been making advances there in the past, really 3 or 4 elections. The question is, at some point, do the margins in those suburban places start to look like the margins in the cities Democrats own? And that would really make it very difficult. Turnout in those places, I mean, make it difficult for Donald Trump. Turnout in those places, obviously, also crucial. But, you know, for this project, I went to someplace very different. I went to Sac County, Iowa, which is a small rural county in Iowa. And in a place like that, my question was, how enthused are these people, these voters that live here? Are they going to turn out? Are they supportive of Donald Trump? This is a reliable Republican place. Are they going to come out? Is the Republican vote going to come out? And the thing I saw there is that rural vote looks solidly behind Trump.
And enthusiastic, too, I guess. Aaron,
Yes.
You said you're from the Pittsburgh area. You spoke to a Democratic leader in that roughly that area, and his story about the balloting is kind of interesting to me. Can you share that?
Well, that's right. This, again, is in Canton, Ohio. Still has steel and manufacturing, but much less than before. They've lost about 40% of their manufacturing jobs. And the Democratic chairman said, hey, on Election Day in the primaries, 2,600 Democrats came in and asked for Republican ballots, but only 1,100 Republicans came in and asked for Democratic ballots. And that's something we hadn't seen before. Democrats usually vote in the Democratic primary. And that was an early sign that in these economically struggling places. I mean, Stark County has come back. Canton has gotten a new coat of paint with healthcare jobs coming in. But there's still an overhang from the loss of all the manufacturing that's left. In places like that, there's a powerful Republican surge that we can see. And we saw it in the primaries, and we see it when union leaders tell us that their union guys who tend to vote Democratic are going to switch to the Republican Party.
All these questions we're asking right now and all this work you've been doing, it's all going to be answered, sort of be moot 4 days from now. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Dante Cheney, Aaron Zitner, thank you both. Clinton at an appearance in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, trying to rally voters in that state. So let's bring in now Kostas Panagopoulos, a political analyst and director of the Center for Electoral Politics and Democracy at Fordham University. Also with us, Fox News political analyst Ed Rollins, former principal White House advisor to President Reagan in both his terms, co-chairman of the pro-Trump Great America PAC. So, Ed, political expert, you've heard a lot of political speeches. We've got 4 days to go. What do you think about what you just heard from Hillary Clinton?
It's not inspiring. It's a very substantive person. You can't take any of that away from her. But it's not inspiring. As you sit and watch it over and over again, which I've now done on several occasions, it's not. It's kind of the litany of things people already know about Trump, and they either like him or don't like him. But it's nothing really addressing the direction of the country. And I don't think it's the way she wanted to end her campaign.
You think it should have been more positive?
I think you always want to end your campaign on a positive note and where you're going to take the country, and she didn't do that.
Kostas, give us your take.
To the extent that you can end on a positive note, and in this election cycle, it's very difficult to end on a positive note, given just how contentious this race is, how much dislike there is for both candidates. This is really going to be an election about which side dislikes the other side more, much more so than a positive message that's going to bring voters to the polls because they like these candidates, because the truth is that they dislike the opponent even more so than they like their favorite candidate in this race. So it makes it very difficult to end on a strongly positive note, and I think we should expect to see the attacks continue to the very end.
So you don't think this is about voting for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? It's about voting against the other person?
Well, to some extent it will be, but probably more so the latter than the former, absolutely.
Hillary Clinton seems to have the advantage when it comes to the number of surrogates she can get out there. She's got President Obama, his wife. She's got her husband, her daughter. Donald Trump doesn't have that.
She does, but at the end of the day, you don't vote for surrogates. No one's going to vote for Barack Obama. They're going to vote for either her or for Donald Trump. So my sense in these closing days, it's good to fill in space as your campaign goes on, have rallies, what have you. But at the end of the day, it's two people. You get a choice of two people. And obviously the Trump people think they're on the offense because of all the FBI investigations and all the things that are challenging her integrity. And when 2/3 of the country don't think she's an honest person, that's a pretty effective surrogate in and of itself. Maybe the FBI is the surrogate here trying to find out what's going on there. Trump obviously is his own surrogate.
You can read the polls pretty much any way you want to. She is ever so slightly ahead in the national race. But when pollsters ask are you enthusiastic about voting for your candidate?
Yeah.
Trump's people have more enthusiasm. Hillary Clinton's, the Democratic get out the vote effort is said to be better. So how do those two balance out?
Well, they may be more enthusiastic about Trump's candidacy in terms of his supporters, but when you ask them how they feel about the other side, you get on both sides voters supporting both camps that are very concerned about the opposition. So as I said earlier, it might be more a matter of who they dislike most. I agree with Ed that surrogates, people don't vote for surrogates, but at the end of the day, the advantage that surrogates present to candidates, and it's not only the big guns like Obama and President Clinton, Michelle Obama and everybody else, but the litany of celebrities and these other surrogates and supporters of Hillary Clinton's, it allows her to spread herself in more places, especially as some places that they were counting on might be actually close and competitive. Places like Michigan, like Colorado, like New Hampshire. These surrogates enable the campaign to have a presence in these places that might be difficult without high-profile people to bring people to events.
Ed, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, you said it would take a miracle for Trump to win this election. Do you still feel that way? Has the math changed?
Well, the math has definitely changed, and I think this has been a campaign which sometimes is about Trump, sometimes it's about Hillary. It's been about Hillary the last week, 10 days, and hasn't been particularly good. It's raised a lot of negatives and reinforced that dishonesty factor. And to me, again, I would not want to have the FBI chasing after me in the closing days of a campaign, and that's certainly where we are.
Ed Rollins, Costas Panagopoulos.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Down because I have so many friends up here because I worked hard during those primaries. Remember, I was supposed to lose the primary. I won in a landslide.
But he's shy, and he would never remind you of that. So let's get to our Fox team coverage today. Ed Henry standing by with the latest on the WikiLeaks release. Alicia Cunha in the battleground state of Colorado. But let's start with Jennifer Griffin, who is live in Cleveland covering the Clinton campaign. Jennifer, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Martha. Well, we are here in Ohio. Hillary Clinton will be heading here later today for a Get Out the Vote concert that will be hosted by Jay-Z. The campaign has a new ad here in Ohio targeting Republicans who to go in Pittsburgh, where she was introduced again by Mark Cuban.
He has a long history of insulting people. It did not just start in the campaign. You can go back and find what he said about all kinds of folks. And one of the things I discovered in preparing for the debates, which I was kind of surprised by, is that he took out a full-page ad in 1987 to criticize President Reagan.
She was, of course, referring to Donald Trump there. Yesterday, she was in North Carolina campaigning with Grammy Award-winning musician Pharrell Williams. Concern about flagging poll numbers today, especially among African-American voters, caused them to turn to Pharrell Williams, among others. That is also why the president flew to North Carolina from Florida today. In D.C. last night, Clinton aide Huma Abedin, who has not been on the campaign trail since the FBI bombshell last week, she attended a fundraiser hosted by Anna Wintour. The campaign says that they have not been contacted by the FBI since last Friday's revelations. And Huma Abedin appeared at that fundraiser. Sources tell me that as of yet, the FBI has not found any classified information on that computer belonging to Huma Abedin's estranged husband, despite reports out there, all sorts of reports out there with various tidbits that have been leaked from these investigations. Back to you.
Quite a week for her. Jennifer, thank you very much. So brand new emails from WikiLeaks revealing candid discussions behind the scenes on the Clinton campaign. Ed Henry in Washington. So Ed, some new intrigue today about Hillary Clinton's IT specialist collecting emails from her advisors, and it sounds like Colin Powell really gave one of them sort of a hard time.
Oh, yeah. Let's go through both of them. Very interesting, adding more intrigue to this whole email scandal. First of all, Brian Pagliano, you'll remember he took the fifth against self-incrimination. He was the IT specialist you mentioned. He signaled that he didn't want to get any deeper into all of this. Well, there's an email just emerged from liberal activist Neera Tanden, who sort of joked about the whole situation and political predicament last September of 2015 for the Clinton camp, but then issued this serious warning. She said, this Brian Pagliano situation seems suboptimal, she wrote to John Podesta. Let me know if I can help you. He says, like, represent me. You're still a member of the bar. She's finally going to do a slew of interviews, meaning Clinton, which will no doubt be viewed by our friends in the press as too little too late. She writes back, Tan, did not represent you, more like buy you Advil and Tums. I'm no longer a lawyer. Brian was the one who retrieved all our emails for Maura to read. Maybe that's why he's avoiding testifying. We've checked. It appears Maura is a counsel from the 2008 campaign where Pagliano got his start. So that's interesting that Neera Tanden is suggesting maybe Pagliano had something else going on with the Clintons from years ago, and that's why he's not talking. That's interesting, and so is this email. Colin Powell, you'll remember the Clinton camp recently said, well, he had the same setup as Secretary of State. Well, that's not exactly true. He used a personal email account, but of course did not have a personal server as Secretary of State. This email, March 2015, the scandal first breaks. He writes to Cheryl Mills, good talking to you, see link. It was a Breitbart story about the Clinton camp trying to say Powell did the same. You really don't want to get me into this. I haven't been asked nor said a word about HRC and won't unless you all start it. So a little shot across the bow there from Colin Powell, but I would add, recently, despite his frustration with the Clinton camp dragging him into this, he still endorsed Hillary Clinton and not Donald Trump, Martha. Yeah,
absolutely true. So, Ed, in terms of this whole thing, because I think most of us picture you in your office just basically up to your nose in WikiLeaks piles all around. Yeah. So weed through the piles for us and tell us what are the most salient things that you have extracted so far.
I'd say there are 3 or 4 big picture points that have kind of been revealing about Hillary Clinton as a candidate. Some we already knew, some you may have suspected, but now it's confirmed there in black and white in some of these emails. Number one, remember these Wall Street transcripts. Bernie Sanders was saying for a long time he wanted those things. They finally came out here. Hillary Clinton talked about how she wanted open borders. She talked about how you need a public versus a private position. Then you had all these attacks on Catholics, Latinos as well. You had a potential quid pro quo with the King of Morocco, $12 million on the condition that Hillary Clinton go and meet with him. And then remember Cheryl Mills saying, we need to clean this up. What the POTUS knew when. The President of the United States, President Obama saying, wait a second, you know, I didn't know about this whole email system, and she said we need to clean this up. What's interesting, the last couple of days, the President's saying, kind of leave Hillary Clinton alone and kind of getting involved in this whole FBI probe is very interesting.
Very interesting. Ed, thank you so much. So Hillary Clinton trying to make her closing statements, and WikiLeaks and the investigation of Anthony Weiner's computer files, and as Jennifer Griffin mentioned, sort of soldiering on without her longtime aide, Huma Abedin, who did make it to a D.C. fundraiser. First time we've seen Huma out and about since all this started.
FBI, will you be back out on the campaign trail soon?
I guess she didn't want to answer that. No answer. Alex Conant is with us today. Served as former communications director for Marco Rubio and a political consultant for Firehouse Strategies, and Emily Tisch Sussman, campaign director at the Center for the American Progress Action Fund. Welcome to both of you. Good to have you here today. You know, you look at what's been going on. It's a very tight race at this point, Emily. And, you know, how much of it do you think is what has changed the dynamic and tightened things up so much when you see that list from Ed?
I don't think it makes a huge difference, honestly. There's been discussion ad nauseum about Clinton and emails, and people don't totally know what it is, but they feel like there's something bad every time you talk about Clinton in emails, even though everything that's come out has actually not been bad. So the problem for Clinton is that it feels like smoke, 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 there must be fire. But there's never any fire. But it becomes so clouded, it's difficult for people to wade through. So I think people have either said, yes, this is a huge deal for me, or I think it's just a lot of noise, and I think that she's the right candidate.
But let's take a look, and then we want to go to Alex, at some of the shift that has happened in the polls. Some are calling it the Comey effect. And she has lost her lead. This really lays it out quite clearly. Florida flipped, Arizona flipped, and Nevada flipped. And North Carolina went from being plus 2.4 for Hillary Clinton. Now it is at a tie. So, Alex, the only other thing that's been significant in that time period is the focus as people opened their Obamacare premiums.
That's true.
Two big issues that may have turned this thing.
I think there's no question that the Comey effect is real, that ever since the FBI announced that it is still investigating Hillary Clinton, her numbers have been in free fall. I mean, she went from being up about 7 points nationwide to being up 2 or 3 points nationwide. It is now a very competitive race going into next Tuesday. And I think it's because a lot of Americans realize realize that if she is elected president, we are going to have a president-elect under investigation by the FBI, and we don't know where it ends. That is bad for the country, irrespective of your politics. Look, I'm not a fan of Hillary Clinton, and I don't mind if she's elected president. I would hope that her domestic agenda would be crippled. But internationally, it's very scary to have a president who is so weak, who is under investigation. I think that's why a lot of Republicans, especially, are coming home in these final days.
I mean, one of the things, Emily, that it does remind people of is what it was like to live in the last Clinton administration when you had a president who was impeached, disbarred, and you see these sort of scandals that hang around the Clintons, honestly, and people say, well, do we really want to go through that for another 4 years, potentially?
Well, I understand that people certainly feel that way and have that concern. But when you look at the contrast between the candidates, Trump actually has trial dates set. And he actually has lawsuits against his company that are open, that are active. And even just this morning on your own network, Giuliani, a surrogate of Trump, said that he basically knew that Comey's letter was coming about a week or two before it did, which does
he said that he had spoken to people who were former FBI officials, and they had, given him that feeling based on what they saw. There's nothing wrong with talking to a former FBI official, and he made it clear that he hadn't spoken to anyone who was actually at the FBI. But, in terms of these things hanging around, I think I'm not making excuses for him, but a lot of companies have lawsuits that they deal with. It's just sort of a fact of life. But when it's a public issue, when it's a taxpayer issue, and the foundation still being under investigation, it does just seem, according to these numbers, that there has been some impact. So she's got to dispel that over the next few days. She's got to move people beyond that, Alex.
Right. If the closing arguments are about the FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton, she's in real trouble going into Tuesday's election. If she's able to change the focus back to Trump and Trump's own personal problems, his personal history, that's good for her. And that's why I think when you watch these two rallies over the last weekends, they're not talking about themselves. They're trying to talk about their opponents. That's smart for both of them.
I mean, overall, she's still ahead in all the numbers. And that's the bottom line as we look at this, but he seems to have the momentum. So it's a fascinating dynamic that you've got heading into the last few days. Emily and Alex, always good to hear from both of you. Thank you very much. Good to see you both. Happy Friday. So the presidential race tightening, as we've been talking about, and one of the places where that's happening is Colorado, where Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are now in a dead heat. In play are the state's 9 electoral votes. Alicia Acuna, live in her home state in Denver today, so she's got the latest for us on what's happening there. Alicia.
Hi, Martha. Yes, we've talked about this. Colorado is often considered the swingiest of the swing states. And up until just a few weeks ago, this appeared to be Hillary Clinton's state to lose. She hadn't spent money on TV here since July. She wasn't visiting. And then came this renewed focus on her emails. So this week, a University of Denver poll shows Trump and Clinton in a dead heat, as you mentioned, when third-party candidates are included. As you can imagine, this state is now getting a lot of love from the campaigns. Today, former President Bill Clinton is speaking in 3 different cities. Chelsea Clinton was here. Bernie Sanders tomorrow. For Trump, his running mate, Governor Pence. Former rival Dr. Ben Carson, along with Donald Trump Jr. That's just this week. Trump's been here 8 times since the nomination. Clinton is back on local TV with ads, and she's spending money again. More than 1.5 million people have returned their ballots, according to the Colorado Secretary of State's office. As of this morning, Democrats are outpacing Republicans so far. That doesn't tell us for whom they have voted. And take a look at the unaffiliated count. 430,000 who could break either way. And Martha, this is the first presidential election in this state where every active voter received a ballot in the mail. So they could either mail it back or, like some folks are doing, they could come by and drop it in one of these election boxes. Martha?
It's going to be very interesting in that state. Alicia, thank you so much. Yep. And breaking news on House Speaker Paul Ryan. A lot of buzz about him today, addressing whether or not he will continue as Speaker. Did you hear these reports this morning?
Hey, everybody.
He says, well, stick around. We'll tell you what he said when we come back.
There are 2 kinds of people in politics. There are show horses and there are workhorses.
Republican vice presidential nominee Mike Pence teaming up with House Speaker Paul Ryan in Wisconsin this weekend in a show of support for Senator Ron Johnson, who's in a pretty tight race with his Democratic opponent, somebody he ran against once before. There's the RCP average on that. Senator Johnson trailing Russ Feingold by 4.7%. That is down from 7 points just a few days ago, and wow, were they wide apart over the summer. Feingold was way ahead, so this thing has narrowed quite a bit. All of this, as RNC Chairman Reince Priebus says, he is confident that Republicans will hang on to the Senate.
I don't want to put a number on it, but I think certainly 51 or more, and I feel good that the number will be more. As of today, we will hold the Senate, absolutely.
Joining me now on the phone from his campaign bus on the road is Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. Senator, welcome. Good to speak with you this afternoon. I know it's a busy time.
Well, Martha, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I looked at the graph from last summer to today, and you're still behind in the Real Clear Politics average, as we just showed, but you have managed to tighten that quite a bit, and I know there's another poll that shows you guys neck and neck. Why is that happening?
Well, it is neck and neck, and I think it's because we're out here telling the truth. And Senator Feingold, 34-year career politician, has very little good to show for it. And his entire campaign has been false, been relentlessly negative.
But I mean specifically, in terms of what issues do you think are driving that narrowing? Is it Obamacare? Is it, an overall look at the presidential race? What do you think specifically?
Well, it's two things. I mean, I've really got a record of accomplishment, but Senator Feingold was one of the deciding votes of Obamacare. He's proud of it. He lied about it, and Wisconsinites recognized he lied about it. He said he liked your health care plan, you can keep it. Thousands of Wisconsinites lost their health care. He said premiums to be lowered here in Wisconsin. Since the implementation of Obamacare, premiums have doubled and tripled on the individual market. Yeah. And, moms who used to be able to afford their insurance with a part-time job are having to quit them and gain full-time employment with time away from their kids. So Obamacare has been a disaster, and he remains proud of his vote. And, and he's callous in saying things like, it's really not as bad as people are pretending it is. They're not pretending these real people hurt. So, again, I think Wisconsinites are actually taking a look at his record. It's a very poor record. Nothing good in terms of accomplishment.
I got you. Let's talk big picture for a moment in terms of Wisconsin in the presidential race. And as we said, Mike Pence and Paul Ryan are going to be speaking together over the weekend, which will be a very powerful image for Republicans in that state, no doubt. Paul Ryan was asked just a little while ago if it's true, these reports this morning, that he would resign or step down as Speaker in the coming weeks. He said that is not true. Any thoughts on that?
Well, he's sitting right next to me, and it's not true. Paul's a patriot. He's a person of real integrity, political courage, ideas, and he's doing this the same reason I'm doing. We're concerned about the direction of this country, and he's got real solutions, the Better Way agenda. That's what he's out promoting, and that's really what we want to do in the next Congress, working together.
So he's sitting right next to you. He's committing to not going anywhere. He wants to remain Speaker for the foreseeable future?
Well, again, I'm not going to speak for him, but no, he's not giving up the speakership, and I'm sure his conference will reelect him as well, because they recognize he's a person of integrity and political courage, and that's what we need at this moment in time.
So let me ask you about, he also was asked about Donald Trump, and, a lot of people have been avoiding using his name on the campaign trail. Your thoughts in Wisconsin at this point in terms of the larger presidential race? Do you think people should have been behind him more solidly throughout this process? There's been a lot of, friction between Paul Ryan and Donald Trump at points in this race.
Well, I know Paul's already voted for Donald Trump, and as you travel around Wisconsin, which I've done relentlessly, there's a great deal of enthusiasm. I see very few Hillary Clinton for president. We do see Hillary for prison yard signs, all kinds of Donald Trump, Mike Pence yard signs. The crowds are fantastic. They're incredibly enthusiastic about our entire ticket, up and down, both state candidates as well as our federal candidates. So this is feeling an awful lot like 2010, which was a wavy election. So I think the enthusiasm is on our side, and of course the corruption is being revealed by Hillary Clinton's email scandal. And by the way, Senator Feingold has his own email scandal. So we got the enthusiasm and the momentum on our side.
Sorry, I'm up against a hard break. Senator, thank you for calling us from the bus. And fascinating take on what's going on in Wisconsin, which is a very tight race to watch. Reince Priebus obviously has his eye on Wisconsin. He's from there. Running down now to Election Day, as you have no doubt noticed. Officials from nearly every state are asking the Department of Homeland Security at this point to make sure that the vote is secure. Secretary Jay Johnson addressed that matter just moments ago as DHS hosts a tour of the National Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center. Last summer, we learned that 2 voting systems in Illinois and Arizona had, in fact, been breached. Remember that? Doug McElway is live in Washington with the latest on this. So how serious a threat is this cybersecurity issue to what happens on Tuesday, Doug?
Well, Martha, in terms of a threat to distort or to actually manipulate or change the vote count nationally, probably not much. And the reason for that is the voting system in the United States is deeply decentralized. Elections are done state by state, as we all know, and within each state, district by district, and polling place by polling place. Even electronic voting machines are not connected to the internet in the vast majority of cases. As a senior White House official told Fox News today, the U.S. intelligence community and the Department of Homeland Security assessed that it would be extremely difficult for someone, including a nation-state actor, to alter actual ballot counts or election results by cyber attack or intrusion. That said, there is little doubt among national security experts that Russia, under President Putin, has been trying to disrupt our political process. 48 states have asked for security help from the Department of Homeland Security.
The U.S. intelligence community is confident that the Russian government directed the recent compromises of emails from U.S. persons and institutions, including from U.S. political organizations. Next, these thefts and disclosures are intended to interfere with the U.S. election process. Can't get any plainer than that.
The WikiLeaks release of DNC emails last summer, which resulted in the embarrassing ouster of DNC chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz during the party's convention, and perhaps the present deluge of John Podesta emails that are damaging the Clinton campaign. But others remain skeptical of Russian involvement in those hacks. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, in an interview with an Australian filmmaker, which is slated to air tomorrow, says that Russia is not behind the Podesta leaks. It's all leading to a lot of confusion about this, Martha.
That's for sure. All right, we'll keep an eye on it. Doug, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Concerns about disqualified ballots on Election Day. Small mistakes, like using cursive to write your name, could lead officials to throw out your vote. Some Ohio Democrats arguing that the law isn't applied equally across the state. Peter Ducey's been digging into this in Columbus, Ohio today. Is this something that benefits one party over the other, do we think, Peter?
Martha, Democrats think that it's hurting Democrats because Reuters did a review that shows counties with big cities in them seem to be quicker when they're deciding whether or not they want to toss a ballot or not. They seem quicker just to toss them out than some less populated parts of the state. This review also found that it happened about 3,000 times in 2014. So we went to the Franklin County Board of Elections this morning to figure out exactly how this process works. And they said that if there's a minor error, like most of your birthday is filled in right, but the year doesn't match up to their records, or if the last 4 digits of your social security number are missing, they'll try to track you down and tell you to fix it. But if you don't fix it, then the ballot's not going to count.
All that we can do is follow the Ohio Revised Code, what it lays out, and the directives that are given to us by the Ohio Secretary of State. We're not allowed to make arbitrary decisions.
So, again, 3,000 ballots tossed out in 2014, but that was an off-year election. They do expect now, experts are predicting that with more people voting in the presidential year, there will be more ballots that get tossed out. Martha?
So any effect really on voter turnout, Peter?
It's interesting. Early in-person voting is up, but early requests for mail ballots are down. We sat down this afternoon in the lunch hour with the Secretary of State from Ohio, John Husted, who told us he thinks that that's more a problem of enthusiasm, and he also said that it looks like that would benefit Trump.
In all counties, the early vote is down, but it's down further in counties that Barack Obama won versus counties that Mitt Romney won. So if you're going to extrapolate from that, which is a dangerous thing to do, you could say that even though enthusiasm overall is down, it's down more in counties that Barack Obama won versus counties that Mitt Romney won.
And the Secretary of State also explained that he thinks some of this diminished enthusiasm is because neither campaign have done a ton of get-out-the-vote events here in Ohio, which used to be the crown jewel of all the swing states.
Yeah,
Martha?
Surprising. Peter Ducey, thank you. So Hillary Clinton battling in the battleground states, I should say, today, including Michigan. Bill Clinton, seen here, making a surprise visit on Wednesday night. He showed up at a faith community leaders meeting in Detroit. Hillary Clinton also spending time in Detroit. Obviously an effort to boost Hillary Clinton's appeal with African-American voters. She's also out with Jay-Z today on the campaign trail. Donald Trump making up some ground on Clinton in Michigan. He has closed the gap, which was 11 points at the end of October, and it is now less than 6 in the Real Clear Politics poll average. Michigan clearly something that everybody's watching very closely. Joined now by Richard Fowler, radio talk show host and Fox News contributor, and Jano Caldwell, Republican strategist with Caldwell Strategic Consulting. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have both of you here. Michigan getting very interesting, and clearly the Clintons are not taking it for granted, Richard. She is there in Detroit, and we saw him at that event the other night, so they're taking this very seriously.
No, they absolutely are. Michigan's going to be close. I just left Michigan, Detroit 2 days ago, so I could tell you it's going to be a very, very close election, which is what we expected this to be. Now, do I think Michigan flips for Donald Trump? I don't think so. I think that Hillary Clinton's going to, squeak out a victory there. And here's the reason why, Martha. I think, yes, the email cloud is surrounding the Clinton campaign and sort of taking them off their game day message. But what we saw from today's jobs report is that we saw an increase in incomes across the board. Now, is this increase good enough? Absolutely not. But it's a step in the right direction. And Hillary Clinton, as we go into these final days, the Democratic turnout machine is going to turn itself on, and it's going to take Hillary Clinton to the finish line. But it's going to be close. There's no question.
No doubt that get out the vote machine will be working in high gear. But in terms of the economy, I think it's pretty tough, Giano, to argue to people in places like Detroit and in some of the more rural areas in Michigan that the last 8 years have been good to them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And when you look at those job numbers, you see that 94 million people aren't participating in this economy. That's what the report shows. So it's kind of hard for Hillary Clinton to build a case to say that she's going to do better for Americans if she's going to be the third term of President Obama. In addition to that fact, when it comes to African Americans and trying to have them coalesce around her, has become a very tough task, because as I write in Red Alert Politics this week, black lives don't matter to Hillary Clinton, black votes matter to Hillary Clinton. When it comes to black voters, and especially college age voters, they're having a very, very difficult time with the WikiLeaks that have come out, and they're beginning to see her as the new Cruella de Vil of politics, someone who will say whatever it takes to get your support, and when it's all said and done, you get nothing in what you were committed to.
Let's take a look at North Carolina here. The Quinnipiac University poll out Wednesday showing Clinton ahead in North Carolina, 48 to 46. And Richard, we remember Donald Trump when he visited Michigan, and I believe it was there that he spoke to people and said, look, why not give me a try? What you have been trying for the past 25, 30 years, and the people that you have elected, especially in places like Detroit, has not worked well for you, so why not give me a try?
There's a couple of responses to that, Martha. Number one, I don't think that Donald Trump is having an authentic conversation with the black community. He's never been in any of these urban areas, so he went to visit Wayne County but did not go to Detroit. He went to Broward County but has not been into Sistrunk. He went into Miami-Dade and didn't go to Opelika or Kendall. He's not having an authentic conversation with the African-American voter. Now, I will say this. I'll give Donald Trump credit. I think his message over the past couple of days has been phenomenal, in which you should have heard from him months ago. But he's not having an authentic conversation on how you really fix the issues happening in African-American communities. And he has a track record that is atrocious when it comes to African-Americans. His company was sued for housing discrimination in the late 70s and early 80s. And we cannot forget what he did to the Central Park Five, those 5 gentlemen who he was part of a mob that basically falsely accused him of murdering a woman in Central Park, which would turn out not to be true. Donald Trump cannot be trusted, and African-Americans know it.
The markers, and as you see them in those cases, which were quite a long time ago. I don't know how relevant those specific cases are to average people who live in this country today and who are experiencing economic distress. Now, you've made your point, Giano. What is more relevant to the African American voter today?
Well, I was wondering, and I was going to ask Richard if he thinks that Hillary Clinton and the Clintons can be trusted when it comes to the black community, because their record is truly atrocious. We're talking about millions of folks, or hundreds of thousands of people going to jail because of the policies enacted by Hillary Clinton. I think that's problematic on many levels, and whatever you compare... Go ahead.
Just a correction. Number one, Hillary Clinton did not implement. He's talking about the 1994
No. But her influence is
wait a minute. The president, President Bill Clinton signed that bill, and he is not on the ballot. He's not on the ballot. And I think people at home understand that he's not on the ballot. Hillary Clinton is on the ballot. Now, let me make one more point. Giano.
Quickly.
Democrats, and don't get me wrong, I think 1994 crime bill was awful. But what Democrats understood, even Cory Booker has said, let's get criminal justice reform done. Donald Trump has not even mentioned criminal justice reform, and the Republican Congress, the Republican senators refuse to give it a hearing or a vote. So if we're going to have a conversation about fixing the prison industrial complex, then let's talk about the facts.
Obviously there's a lot of concern about the African American vote because we saw a tremendous turnout in 2008 and 2012 for President Obama. He is not on the ticket, as we all well know. So whether or not those areas and those individuals will turn out to vote for Democrats, or whether Donald Trump can get a bigger piece of that vote than Republicans have gotten in the past is going to be one of the fascinating stories that is in this election. Because I think a lot of people are not necessarily voting along the lines that they voted along before, but, we'll see come Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.